أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum all, and thank you for joining us tonight. With me, I have Brother Peter Gould. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Peter.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah. And yourself?
Alhamdulillah, really great, really great. Yeah, nice to be with you and meet all of your community today. Great to be on the call.
We're very excited to have you. I'll just quickly introduce a bit about yourself, even though a lot of people know you, mashallah. Brother Peter Gould is the Design Executive Officer at Zileej, an inspired innovation and design company headquartered in Dubai. He leads a global strategic creative team developing original brands, products, and experiences that enable a more inclusive and representative future. Recent highlights include the Salam Sisters brand, which inshallah we'll talk about very soon, designed to empower and inspire young girls to dream big. In 2017, Peter's original design studio, Gould Sydney, was acquired by Zileej after 15 years successfully servicing clients such as Etihad Airways, Dubai government, and the United Nations. Peter's personal spiritual journey has been a major influence on his creative work. His contribution in founding creative platforms, events, community initiatives, and Islamic Economy startups have resulted in a global recognition, including a major award from the UAE Prime Minister. So we'll get started, inshallah, with our questions.
Great, sounds good.
Good. Okay, so our theme tonight is inspiring Generation Z through creativity, art, and technology. Why do you believe it is vital for schools to encourage our students to be creative through art and technology?
Cool. Well, before I answer that, can I do something really cheesy, because I'm a father of 3 kids and it's the end of the school term, and I know that mostly we're speaking to teachers and educators here, and I just probably feel like saying congratulations for finishing another year. It must be such a amazing feeling, and I have to say, just seeing how much teachers do every day and every year, like how you guys, like I run a design team in a company, but like running 30 kids every day must be a tremendously challenging, but also rewarding process. So I mean, I know it's really cheesy, but just a shout out to all the teachers who've done a whole year. Mabruk, mashallah. It's such a blessing.
It is.
You guys make such an impact. It must be an amazing feeling.
And it's such a bittersweet feeling, because I've had my cohort for 2 years, and it feels good to have a break, but it's so hard to say goodbye to them as well.
Yeah, sure. I just can imagine, but you know, you have that impact on them, you know, permanently for the rest of their lives. So anyway, just I just feel like sharing that, and it's you know, I really respect how much I've also in this space, especially spending time with different Muslim educators and teachers, alhamdulillah, around the world. Like there's just this real drive and passion and energy that's this consistent thread in the wherever pockets I managed to meet them. And you know, we were chatting briefly earlier about how much I see teachers making their own efforts to, you know, make their own resources and design their own kind of content, and just put a lot of love and passion and time into those things. So I think that's great. And so you know, shout out to all the teachers. But anyway, let me answer your question. So so you're asking about why it's important to have creativity and art and technology, and the role of that I see. I think it's a great question, and I think it's one that I'm hearing because I spend a lot of time in startup circles where you have big tech companies, and you know, the big companies are kind of leading a lot of the change we experience today. So you know, I spent some time at places like Facebook or Google, or even companies like Airbnb, and you know, these companies have a big impact on our lives. You know, companies like Apple, and I speak to the designers there and people there, and I asked them, because I have my own kids as well, I'm curious, like, how do they hire? What are they looking for? You know, what sort of career advice they might give? These are obviously companies that are very creative. They use technology, and arguably they're, you know, a huge force of change and disruption, more than lots of other industries, like traditional industries, like in you know, power or energy or medical or whatever. They're all important, but anyway, so thinking and projecting ahead, students of today, what should we be looking at? And consistently, the kind of things I hear is creative problem solving, the ability to work with other people to, you know, creatively take a challenge and think imaginatively how we can work through those things. You know, different sort of like bringing a creative mindset or even like a designer mindset to the problem. I don't hear those kind of people that I chat to say like, oh, we really need something who are amazing at math, amazing at English, amazing at science. They're kind of a given. And they're not hiring based on even degrees and marks. They're hiring on, have you tried to run a startup before? How, you know, like I was in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, and the people I'm meeting who are finishing grade 12, going to university, going to places like Stanford, super high achieving like kids, they already have at least one startup. They've like launched an app, they've done all these things. Like, wow, these are like, yeah, mashallah, really amazing sort of kids and families. And I was like, wow, if students in our Muslim communities sort of were around and inspired by that type of mindset, that would be so amazing. So I just think, I'm not necessarily saying that creativity is art and painting and visual arts. I think all of those things are really important for child's expressiveness and creative journey. But I'm talking about having a creative mindset, problem solving, using imagination, and solving those things through using idea, you know, thinking big and bold with things like technology. If we instill more of that in our young kids today, which I've done through some workshops, for example, and through some projects I've done, you just see them light up, and you see like start designing. So I'd love to see more of that in our classrooms.
Inshallah. So, okay, in terms of feasibility then, what does it look like in the classroom? I mean, how do educators provide for students the opportunities to be critical thinkers? I find that a lot of the time I hear teachers saying, or schools saying, it costs too much to purchase all these products and resources, whereas I believe something like STEAM, you can be quite resourceful, you know, and ideally you would want to be resourceful with that, because if we're talking about our future, then really we need to start focusing on sustainability anyway. So could you give us some examples of the workshops that you've taken part in? And also you have a website, Islam Imagined, which I think has lots of ideas, STEAM ideas that incorporate resourcefulness.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one thing I sort of observed, I mean, my eldest is in grade 4 now, going to 5, and I have, you know, my youngest is going into kindergarten. So I've sort of had a bit of a few years in that sort of primary education space to see how things happen in a classroom, meet a lot of teachers, and, you know, I've taken a real interest in the methodology and what sort of where the focus is. And I don't know what the right word is, but I have empathy for teachers. I feel like, wow, there's so much you have to fit, you know, just to make the basic curriculum. It's like, how do you even do that? And like, there's so much, and then there's so many like school events and activities. It just feels like teachers have to like juggle so much. They have to, you know, bring in their own sort of passion and love and time, and then just also basic like classroom management. Like, I really, honestly, I'm not like just trying to, you know, win smiles. I mean, it's an incredible profession that you know, that people don't appreciate. I think what must go into it. And why I'm saying that, because I don't think it's fair for someone like me who's running a design team to go to teacher and say, oh, you guys should be doing this, you should do that, you know, you need to have more design time, you need to have more STEAM activities, you need to go and get some robots and coding classes. I don't think that's fair, because you just have so much on. But I will say, I think what I sort of feel like anecdotally from what I've observed, you could bring into some of the current classrooms, the current sort of topics and the way it's taught, very basic ways of letting them do problem solving with really simple resources. You know, I'm talking like, for example, I ran big fancy kind of workshops in Dubai with all these government people, blah, blah, blah. I much prefer doing little workshops with kids, by the way, it's much more fun. But the Dubai stuff, like in the big fancy buildings or whatever, I just want pen and paper, just colored markers and paper. I don't want any fancy tech robot things. I'm not bringing coding. I'm not bringing any of that stuff. Just get pen and paper, because the imagination does the work, right? The kids have it built in. All you got to do is unlock it. And your creative peak is in those early years. Like, you ask a kid today, this is one of my favorite activities. You mentioned Islam Imagined, so I'll come back to that in a moment. But you ask a kid to, okay, draw the space mosque. What does the mosque in space look like? And in the first, like, sort of up until about age like 6 or 7, they have the best, craziest, coolest designs. Like, I've seen such wonderful responses, people drawing all sorts of wonderful things and thinking about, oh, well, this is where the aliens would pray, and this is where, like, you know, you would land, and all these things, and like, there's no issues with moon sighting because you can see like all these cool things, right? Like, They think of all these great things. But by the time I've noticed in Muslim schools, they get to like the higher grades, the space mosque activity, it looks like a mosque, right? There's domes, there's more, it just kind of looks like it's less imaginative. And I think that's a product of our sort of wider societies where we think about, oh, being creative is drawing, but it's not, it's your mindset.
Yeah.
So that partly inspired this islamimagine.com. So just, I don't know, what was your take on that before I explain on that? Like, how do you, when you visited that site, and I'm glad you did, yeah, like what do you think of before I try and sell it to you?
How easy it is to incorporate those ideas. Because we did have a conversation, my colleagues and I were having a conversation early this week in regards to the new science syllabus, and the fact that we have to and we should be incorporating things like coding and robotics and STEAM. But then you've got all these major corporations trying to dig into that and sell you products for thousands and thousands of dollars, which many schools can't fund. So when I looked into your website, I was like, it's so feasible, because a lot of the ideas just required butcher's paper, markers, and you know, things like Minecraft. We can all have access to that. So mashallah, I was quite impressed, and I can see where you're drawing into their imagination and their creativity.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest tool, right? The imagination and the creativity. Just let that, you know, be the core asset. You don't, I think you need to buy stuff. And I personally feel like, if you're giving me this, you know, to share some of my thoughts, like I feel there's way overemphasis on coding, right? And I'm someone in the design technology field. I'm developing apps. I'm around tech companies often. It feels like it's become this trend, and coding is, yeah, it's a great thing to learn about, but don't mistake that for true creativity. That's sort of, I think, learning another skill, another technical skill. That's great. But yeah. I think what's more important, what, like, you know, professions in the future will look like is, you know, the coding technology will always change, you know, but the fundamentals of being able to problem solve and think things through and come up with imaginative ways to approach them. That was the whole premise of inspiring this islamimagine.com platform that I developed. So it's a very simple idea. It's like, how do we bring, you know, faith-inspired or, you know, Islam-friendly, STEAM-based activities to homeschoolers, to educators, to teachers, and just give them about, I think I made 30 different activities. They're all free, very simple to run. Usually, most of them we try to make simple. Often it's just using the existing resource, like you watch something on YouTube, like this great series called Design Squad, right? So you watch a Design Squad video with, you know, these kids making stuff, and then you ask the kids to, you know, do their own version or have a go at that activity.
Yeah, mashallah. I'd also like to see, you know, more emphasis on getting kids to be creative in terms of the theme of sustainability. So imagine, you know, looking at alternatives to plastic usage, and seeing what's happening without, you know, putting out there the issues with our marine life and our wildlife, and then looking at alternatives and getting them to think of ideas, which I don't think would require a lot of resources as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a, that's right. It's sort of the encouraging the right mindset, I suppose. So, you know, I think if you bring this, you know, encourage or try to instill this, I kind of call it the designer mindset. Right? Obviously, I'm a little biased because, you know, I work in design day to day. I run design companies and so on. But the designer mindset is, you know, someone who is curious about the world and approaches problems as design challenges. Right, so they'll look at, you know, issues around sustainability, or even more specifically, they'll look at, you know, wow, we just throw away so many coffee cups, or we throw away so many things, you know, straws pollute the oceans, and, you know, or even bring it home even more closely, like, oh, look how much consumption there is in my family. Rather than just think of that as immediately the thing, like, oh, I'm going to solve that. You can start framing questions. So like, okay, how, instead of just going straight to like, how do I get people to use less? It might be, well, get people to reframe the challenge. It's like, okay, well, how might we ask parents to instill a more responsible use in their home of, you know, the way things are consumed? Or you bring design challenges, you know, rather than sort of just a problem and a brief. Try and, let kids. So even the same way, some of the assignments you have, rather than sort of, it depends on the age of the kid, but rather than giving them like a clear design brief, this is what you need to make, like, build a model that does this, or build, assignment for this issue. Open it up and just throw them the problems and the mindset of how they might approach that. And you'd be amazed at how people will come up with their own ways of tackling things very creatively.
MashaAllah. And you've seen this even through kindergarten. So, and you were saying, in fact, it's the younger years, MashaAllah, where, because they haven't been so molded into, our perceptions, they've been able to unlock their creativity quite easily, MashaAllah.
Yeah, it's all there. I mean, you guys would know, like, I'm the student, you're the teachers, you would see that. And I sort of, it's probably a bigger topic that, and I don't want to go on a big rant about it, but I see that, wow, there's just so much you have to get through these sort of basics. But I do appreciate that, some teachers will find a way to bring some sort of artistic activity into the classroom. I'd love to see, especially Muslim schools, bring in more design-related activities, right? Which is in through your STEAM, where it's not just about, oh, let's do some calligraphy today, or let's copy this Islamic pattern. That's nice. I think that's a beautiful thing to do. Let them be designers, like, how do you solve this problem? Things that they might care about, like, simple things like, every time I go with Dad to Jummah on a Friday, there's so many cars parked everywhere. How do we solve that issue? Or, like, how is it after Jummah that I always lose my shoes and I have to spend half an hour? Like, be creative. Maybe there's a drone at the front door. You put your shoes with the drone, it carries your shoes and brings them back. Or maybe, like, we don't all have to crazy park at Jummah and have this big, chaotic mess. Like, design, think our own community, and that's simple problems. What about bigger problems, like, the way mosques are built, and are they inclusive enough? Are they designed to do what they traditionally did, bring people together? Anyway, I feel like I can rant for too long.
No, I love it, and I'm sure the audience do too. Even using the environment as well, and how are we creating the masjid to fit well into our context and our environment, our natural environment. Because I think Islamically, a while back, they used to design buildings so that it doesn't take away from the environment.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a long tradition in Islamic architecture, in particular, of being contextual. So so I went to Beijing last year, for example, and I fell in love with the mosques in Beijing because they were very old and they fit just like you would sort of see then think of like the same style of the Forbidden City in the middle of Beijing, or something near the Great Wall, and then you have these beautiful mosques with and they change, the cultural context shifts. But the message is the same. So when they referred to the Prophet ﷺ in this context, they said, the great sage said this, and it contextually. So that comes through architecturally. And I think we can really change that up here in Australia, where we kind of tend to import, a Turkish, expression here, or, sort of a more of an Arab influence here. That's okay. I'm not here to say, don't try it. But the generations going forward, how do we make it embrace that culture? And the culture of today, if you look at our kids, they're using a lot of apps, they're getting online, they're using technology, they're developing whole languages and cultures around video gaming. Now I think that's not a problem. It's just, how do we use those in the right way? Doesn't mean, ban kids from playing Fortnite, or maybe it does, but could you not create great alternatives, great experiences that also get them thinking creatively, maybe more thinking about Allah? Like, why can't we create video games that help do that? That's what I'm hoping we can do. We need young designers who can do this stuff.
So, okay, if I give you a scenario, next term I'll be teaching the attributes of Allah, His names. We want kids to really reflect on it. So in terms of, what the Prophet ﷺ told us about encompassing His names, there are 4 elements to it. Dhikr, characterization, for example. So from a design perspective, how would you create an opportunity for students to not only understand the attributes of Allah, but then to go out there and utilize the names to not only characterize themselves, but to problem solve?
Yeah, that's an awesome design brief, right? Like, so a designer or design team would approach that and say like, how might we let younger students fall in love with Asma al-Husna and understand and want to tell others about them, right? So the designer mindset is bringing that sort of question, and it doesn't jump to like, oh, which book are we teaching? You know, they think about, okay, so I'd be thinking about, okay, what are kids into today, right? What are young, like if they are left to their own devices, many kids will go straight to a screen, right? Or straight to an app, or they want to play this, or you know, and you can't blame them. That's just sort of, these devices are designed to be very magnetic, very you know, hypnotic sometimes, and there's a big danger there. I was thinking, okay, how do you use a bit of that technology, but also complemented by that important, timeless, you know, face-to-face kind of interaction that you can have in the classroom? What activities and gaming styles and, importantly, storytelling elements can you use? So these kinds of things combined, so some technology, some creative thinking, storytelling, these are the kinds of things that I'd be thinking, well, that's what kids resonate with. What I don't think they resonate with is, you know, some guy just standing up trying to tell them stuff in, you know, in a way they can't quite relate to, or a book that's kind of half photocopied and really poorly designed. How can those resources compete with Channel and Pixar and the full creative experiences that have been designed? We need to create things of Disney and Pixar quality that have strong, beautiful, values-based or Islam-inspired content. Like, that's my dream, to sort of create, you know, Muslim level quality, Disney level quality with Islamic content, inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, we still have a few more minutes, and somebody's asked about the Salam Sisters project. So how did that come about?
Yeah, awesome. I'm really happy someone asked that question. So that's been a big project that, alhamdulillah, we developed this year, my team and I. So my team is in Sydney, Dubai, and Toronto. And this is something that was inspired. So I have 2 daughters, and it was inspired by pretty much the question that we've been talking about, which is, okay, how do we inspire and empower and excite kids to even think that Islam is even sort of not this totally separate part of their life, when they're spending a lot of time, you know, loving stories and animation and video content and toys and games, and that's sort of what they love and what they spend time with, playing and imaginative worlds. So Salam Sisters was our attempt to bring that world, bring that storytelling element, encourage and inspire and empower Muslim kids through great products, great playful, inspiring playful experiences. So we created this line of dolls that have these digital apps, and they kind of go together. And we wanted to really, you know, aim for a really high standard, make sure parents and kids love them. And we developed this range. You can check out salamsisters.com. And it's been great. Alhamdulillah, we launched it, and with almost, you know, very low marketing budget, we've got into, like, you know, Huffington Post and BuzzFeed and BBC and, you know, like CNN, all these places. They loved it. They loved the stories. And it's been a great journey, alhamdulillah.
Inshallah. Yeah, my daughter's lucky enough to have one, and so we've used the app. And I did see it being sold through Mecca Books as well. I think is that an American or UK site? I'm not sure. But that's,
yeah, they're sold in around the planet, and in Indonesia they're most popular, which is great. They're at RAS this weekend in Toronto. So we've got 3 of our team members there in Canada with all the dolls and stuff. So yeah, that's been an awesome project, and I just think an attempt. I mean, my hope there is not just to have that individual one-off success, but to, I guess, upgrade our questions. So the whole idea is like a whole bunch of Muslim kids who grew up with Salam Sisters or know about it, or eventually if you did Baraka Brothers, for example, whatever, is show them and just, you know, let them experience that, because they deserve awesome products like that. They don't feel like half-baked, like kind of like cheap amateur sort of, you know, the Muslim stuff is always low. Like, make them really high, really inspire them to do it themselves. Like, go out, build awesome products. You can do this. Someone started it. You know, go start your own entrepreneurial, you know, startups. Try and use your design imagination. Like, that's what I hope we inspire into Muslim kids' hearts right now.
Inshallah. Someone's asked if you homeschool or send your children to an Islamic school, and you've informed me that you do send them to an Islamic school.
Yeah, they're at a community. I don't want to share too much online, but it's a great local school, and yeah, it's a Muslim community school here in Sydney, and yeah, I think they've got a great community. Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. It's one of those things that whenever I'm sitting with other parents having coffee, like you spend 2 hours talking about kids and school and education and this and that. It's like, oh, why don't we have the Steiner this, or I'm going to homeschool that, or you know, like, no, this is the way, or like everyone has their path and their way, and they know their kids, and I just respect everyone has their own understanding. And I have a lot of like love and respect for you know, passionate parents that want to homeschool, or kind of homeschool even if their kids go to school, so they just spend all their time developing content. So I mean, there's just this great community of people developing content, and what I've seen is like there's a lot of replication. So someone in the UK or London, or you know, and someone in San Francisco, or someone in Sydney, or someone in, you know, Kuala Lumpur or Istanbul are making similar types of stuff because they have similar types of concerns and aspirations for the kids. So part of my one of my side projects is help people share this kind of content. So one side project I remember sharing with you somewhat earlier was MuslimKidsGuide.com, and I sort of put it on, it's sort of a side project, but at some point I'd love to reimagine that. So if anyone wants to help out with MuslimKidsGuide.com, it's just like curated the best of Muslim content for kids, resources, and, you know, which, you know, all stuff. We'll do that one day.
Inshallah, definitely. Sounds good. Just quickly, someone's asked, what does Peter think of the design of our Islamic schools with reference to community and learning?
Okay, like you mean in like Sydney, like this, like the quality of learning, or?
I can't see who's commenting. So I am assuming. So I know you've done our school's branding, Irfan College, mashallah.
Oh, in terms of like, yeah, the actual design and like branding of schools and their presentation and communication. Yeah. Well, yeah, Irfan College we did. I think last year I remember I wasn't leading that, but our team was developing it. And well, one thing I'll say, I'm not sure if I fully answering it what they had imagined, but the presentation and communication of our Muslim schools and educational institutions, it's so important, right? It's, you know, and not just, of course, schools and educational kind of institutions, but in any Muslim organization, you would hope that the level and quality of communication and presentation and branding should be, we hope, really high, because that's really how people judge us. It's the adage of like, you know, we're judged by our cover, and, you know, if you have an impressive site, if your school presents well, if you have the right imagery, language, you know, if people visit, because that's how they kind of judge you. It's not everyone will see the students and the teachers and sit and converse. One of my teachers told me is like, they're always listening to us with their eyes, right? They're always listening to us with their eyes, meaning they're always observing. And that definitely counts so much more for your presentation, your branding, your communication, the types of events. So one of my favorites was the local school here, Arcana College, did a Ramadan experience with the local Westfield, right? So I helped them set that up a little bit. We designed this little experience. It got press. We got it, you know, we were finalists in a multicultural marketing awards. That kind of stuff is really powerful. So don't underestimate. The thing is, you have such, you know, there's great teachers, great material, great students, but often just the way it's presented and packaged doesn't make it out into the broader Australian community. So if there are ways to help just boost our, you know, the way we present and the way we brand things through design, that'd be awesome. But we need to encourage a whole new generation of designers to do that, you know. So parents, teachers, encourage your kids to explore design as a career, and that's my hope and message.
And also, I think provide opportunities for collaboration. I mean, as you said, Arcana College had collaborated with the local Westfield store, and that's so doable as well. And I think a lot of organizations in our community welcome us with open arms. So the opportunities are there, inshallah. Yeah,
that's it. And look, again, respecting the teachers are just so jam-packed with so much stuff you have to just do. So I really appreciate that. But I mean, one of my sort of hopes, and I guess people I've spoken to, is to help develop more material or resources or platforms like Islam Imagined, where there's just stuff ready to go. So you just go on, grab it, do a lesson, and create more templates and more materials. I have done a few.
Yeah, we could link the outcomes from the syllabus, so we can create a more thematic approach where your science outcomes are met alongside with your maths and English outcomes. And so if it's thematic, you're meeting all these different outcomes in less time, and so you've created more time for yourself, I suppose.
Absolutely. And there's so many great examples from Muslim history that have great examples that I imagine teachers could bring in if they had the time. So Al-Farabi on music, or Al-Kindi, like there's so many things you could bring into an Islamic context, and just really inspire the students to appreciate the legacy and the heritage. And before I was Muslim, I didn't know any of that stuff, and now I'm like, wow, there's a really strong visual heritage and like cultural legacy. Even Australian Muslim history is fascinating. I didn't know about that until we did this project with the Islamic Museum of Australia, where we went around.
Yeah,
it's there. That's a great resource. There's a video we did called Boundless Plains, which you can order. It's designed for schools. And we made a little book for schools as well, teaching about Australian Muslim history, which is very rich, and not many schools, I think, even know that. But some schools send their kids down to the IMA to do projects, to visit and learn from that. So there are some great things in our community already. It's just, I guess, helping people discover them and reduce the barrier to entry. So it's really easy just to know about them and share.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, that's all we have time for. Mashallah, half an hour just flies, and it's been really beneficial. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, my daughter's she's still awake.
No problem. She's very welcome. Alhamdulillah. It's been great.
I'll post some of the resources, and if you have more, please share them with us, because we would like to view them, especially the Islam Imagined site. As I said, it is quite beneficial, and it's quite user-friendly as well, so teachers will really enjoy that site, inshallah. And hopefully, hopefully we can interview you again.
I'd be happy to anytime. And I'm thinking about doing some more workshops next year. So maybe I'll figure out some schools to connect with and do a series or something, inshallah. So thanks for having me. It's great to chat.
Thank you. All right. Assalamu alaikum, Peter.
Wa alaikum salam.